Welcome to the Sustainable Travel Podcast. I'm Emma, your host from That Travel. This is a podcast that interviews a range of different travelers from different backgrounds to see what sustainable travel means to them. And today I am here with Ilani, who is a first-time parent in Malaysia, who hosts meetups to empower other first-time mums through positivity and community. And today we'll be talking about sustainable travel as a parent, especially one with a toddler. Hi, Ilani.
Hi, Emma. Thank you so much for having me here.
Thank you for coming on. You look really beautiful in your library room. It's very fancy.
Thank you. So are you.
We've been chatting kind of backwards and forwards, and it's definitely something that I think even when I approached you, you said to me, I don't know if I'm actually sustainable. I don't know if this is something I can talk about. So I'm really excited to explore this topic. I think it's going to be a really fun one.
Yeah, I'm excited too.
So tell us a little bit about you, and just how you came to do what it is that you do.
Yeah, so my name is Ilani. I am a first-time mom to a very cheeky, strong-willed, but lovable toddler. He's 3 now. And I am a huge advocate for supporting first-time moms, just based from my own experience of really kind of struggling in my early motherhood journey. I mean, even now, some days I'm still struggling, but I feel like I'm in a better place compared to where I was in the beginning.
Yeah.
And yeah, I am passionate about helping moms and empowering, especially first-time moms,
Yeah.
having gone through postpartum depression and anxiety. And I thought, well, why don't I create a safe space for other moms also so that, it takes a little bit off from their load. And yeah, I live in Kuala Lumpur, Malaysia, where it's summer weather all year long, and I love it. And now I host community events for my community, providing them with a safe space and the tools and knowledge and the support that they need to basically thrive in motherhood.
Yeah, amazing.
So yeah, I'm very excited to be here.
It's super cool. I am not a parent, but my sister just very recently became a first-time mum. And even from the outside looking in, it looks very hard, like a real struggle.
It is. Yeah, I feel like every mom has their own journey,
Yeah,
and it really depends on, their personality and also their baby, because I feel like some babies are more easygoing compared to others. But I think generally first-time moms, they always feel a little bit nervous
yeah,
because it's a full-time job and there's no kind of manual to it. You're
yeah.
kind of learning on the job, learning on the go, and it changes so much. Like when they're babies and then when they're toddlers, when they start eating, then they start, running around. It's like every time you kind of level up. So
It's like a
yeah.
new challenge. I feel like I mean, she's doing really well with it, but I feel like, as you said, it's so hard because every baby's different, every parent's different. So no one can really write a book and be like, okay, here's everything you need to know about children. So what you do is super important. And I feel like you're a huge, huge support, even if you're not as aware of it. But just people in the community who need someone to lean on, someone to say, yeah, I know it's really tough. And especially when you're a mum, I feel like it's not easy to admit that.
Yeah, because we feel like we have to do everything.
Mm,
Um, or there's kind of that expectations
yeah,
on women and especially moms to kind of have everything together. But I think that's what I really love about the power of social media is that we're so connected and it's so easy to get information and to feel like you're not alone.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
So I'm really, really thankful, having the ability to connect with other moms.
Mm,
So
I love that. And you do travel as well, right? So you travel with your toddler and with your
Mhm.
husband.
Yes, yes. Before I had my son, I loved traveling, which I can go more into it later on. But yeah, I think there's been a huge difference in the way that we travel.
Yeah.
When I was single. Um, And then now that, I have a husband and a son, it's just, yeah, it's different,
Yeah.
but in a good way.
Yeah, of course. Of course, it's
Mhm.
all different, but I think it's really cool that you do take him traveling as well, because that's like something that I see so many parents lose this part of themselves where they're like, I can't do it or I don't want to. I think it's really empowering that you just do that as well.
It's so interesting that you said that because that's exactly how I feel.
Yeah.
It's like because I used to love traveling so much. And so me traveling with my son was basically just me trying to reclaim that part of me.
Yeah.
Because like when you go through motherhood, you really become a new person, like in a way. But there are certain parts of you that you still try to like hold on to
Mhm.
that, you really feel like that's what like makes you who you are.
Yeah.
And I feel like, traveling was like a big part of me before. And so when I had my son, I was like really overwhelmed and anxious. I was like, how like I was worried about bringing him, like on road trips or like even on flights. Like, what if he cries and he bothers other people? Like, how do I handle those kind of situations? Um, and yeah, so but the thing is like, the more at the beginning it's a bit like nerve-wracking, but once you do it like more and more, you kind of get the hang of it. And also they grow.
Yeah.
So every time he's a little bit older, it gets a little bit easier, I feel.
Yeah, that's good. And I feel like people are not very tolerant of like children crying in general, or like, especially as you said, on planes, like people really don't have the time for it. They're just like, stop your child crying. And it's like, well, I'm doing my best. Like, he's also a person.
Exactly. I wish people would just like be more empathetic and just understand that there's no on and off button on babies. Like you can't do anything. I mean, of course there are some things that you can try to like mitigate.
Yeah.
But yeah, especially if they can't communicate yet,
Yeah.
sometimes it's really hard to figure out what's wrong and you're just trying to help them and you're trying your best. So,
Yeah.
but thankfully I feel like in Malaysia, the people are more friendly towards kids, and
Yeah.
I feel like a lot of places in Southeast Asia as well. And so that's part of like um, things that we consider when we do travel
Mm.
is how kid friendly is the location or the destination.
Yeah.
We try to do as much research as we can into that, and so I wouldn't really if I know a place is not as friendly towards kids, then I would probably like hold off until he's older.
Yeah, it's got to be your first consideration. I think that's where people get stuck is like, well, I've got to think about my child first, which of course you do. But then I think they're like, well, it's just too hard. It's too overwhelming. Like, I'm not going to do it. I think there's space for both types. But in my opinion, like what you're doing, trying to kind of get him out into the world at such an early age, like it's like anything, right? Like the more exposure you give him to these things, the more of a well-rounded person hopefully he'll become.
Yeah, and kids are very resilient
Yeah, they really are.
and, and they are so curious about everything and they remember. I noticed that my son, he remembers a lot of like places
Yeah.
specifically, places and people. So
Wow.
sometimes he'll just like randomly ask us about like, oh yeah, I remember when we went to Phuket, and I'm like, how do you remember that?
And he's 3.
These three, yeah, yeah, yeah.
Oh,
But it's just random things, or even like people, like he meets like our friends, and he'll like ask like, "Oh, how is Auntie so and so? How is Uncle so and so? Can we call them?"
oh. That's really sweet. But as you say, like if he's remembering those places, like they'll stay with him in his subconscious. Like it's honestly, and maybe I'm naive, but it's my belief that if we can introduce children to like more cultures, then they will have more tolerance as they grow, and they'll have more understanding. Um, and that's vital. Like we need more of that in the world.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. I feel it's so important to ex give him exposure,
Yeah.
to like different cultures and like learn about other people. And, when you travel, you realize that, the world is so big and there's so much kindness and positivity. And yeah, people are so nice. And yeah, it's an important life lesson,
Yeah.
um, that kids are so innocent. And they're really, really open. And so, yeah, I think that's an important value that we try to instill.
Yeah, and the curiosity as well surely will take him to like learn more and more. It's really cool. But I do see you like when you post, I often see you mention like little things that have to do with sustainability, like be careful when you go in, like don't trespass here, or make sure you do this to protect the environment. So it was super interesting to me when I first spoke to you, and you basically said, yeah, I don't really consider myself a sustainable traveler, or like I don't know if I have much expertise. Um, so what, like, why did you say that? And what does it mean to you, like sustainable travel now you've thought about it this week?
Yeah, I was a bit surprised that you reached out to me, but I was but I was like, oh, okay, let me like think about it for a bit. I think because like it made me kind of sit down and think about like, okay, what are some of the things that I naturally do that would count as part of sustainability, even though it may not be like my number one priority.
Yeah.
Um, and yeah, I was sitting down and I was thinking about it. I'm like, I didn't even know I was doing it. But I guess it's part of sustainability. Um, and it made me realize that sustainability is such a big umbrella.
Yeah.
I think you've mentioned about it before. There's like four main pillars.
Yeah.
Um, and it's like we don't have to be perfect in
Yeah.
all of them. And it's just like, every bit that we do counts. And so, things for me that like that kind of popped in my head when you asked me was, things like traveling locally. We love supporting local businesses and small businesses, and traveling, within like a short distance and staying in smaller accommodations whenever we can.
Yeah.
So, for example, last year we visited a really small island called Pulau Kapas in Malaysia.
Mhm.
And we found out that like all of the accommodations there are solar powered.
Wow.
And yeah, it's actually quite common in other islands in Malaysia as well. And yeah, they do their best to like conserve water. And I think they have like blocks of time throughout the day where there's like no electricity so that
Mhm.
they can like conserve energy. And then another example was when we went to Phuket. I was interested in visiting elephant facilities
Yeah.
because it's so like popular, but um, I remembered, like from following you and like other sustainable travel accounts that a lot of these sanctuaries are really not that ethical.
Mm.
And I didn't even know that like, oh, even if you don't ride them, like things like bathing them or like feeding them or like touching them is so unnatural for,
Yeah.
wild elephants.
Yeah.
And so I think that was one that was like, it was truly hands off. But it was really far from where we were staying. And so we just like opted out of that.
Mm.
Um, yeah, and I remember like when I wrote my article for like, the guide to traveling to Phuket with a toddler, I like highlighted that. I was like, listen, if you go to Phuket, like, really do your research and like consider even just like skipping it or like, you don't really need to do that. Even though I know that kids would love to see elephants, right? But yeah, there were so many other things to do.
Yeah.
And then um, yeah, and I guess like financially as well, having a kid is so expensive.
Yeah.
So we've had to like really kind of be intentional
Yeah.
about how we like spend and how we travel and if we can travel.
Yeah.
And if we do, like how do we do that? So yeah, I guess it's, being sustainable is a balance.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, and it's interesting when I think about like, okay, even though I don't really have sustainability at the forefront of my mind, but now I'm gonna be more mindful of that.
Well, it just made me laugh because you were like, I don't really think that I qualify. And then you listed like 30 ways that you're a sustainable traveler. And I was like, I think you do. But it's true that sometimes it's a good point to focus on that sometimes we don't consider like what we're doing sustainable because we're just, traveling the way we travel. But it's great to highlight that you don't need to be an expert in sustainability or like consider yourself a sustainable traveler to still be able to do exactly what you do, which is very sustainable. And even to the point where you were talking about finances, I know from speaking to you before that you also stay in a lot of like locally run accommodation, local guest houses, like staying kind of with families, that sort of thing. And I think a lot of people with children would be very cautious of doing that because they think, well, I don't want to, I don't know, like put my child at risk or something, but it's not risky. Like it's a great exposure for them. It's great for them to stay in places that are more locally run and have kind of friendlier hosts and things, I think.
So when we went to Pulau Kapas, the chalet that we stayed in was run by like local people.
Mhm.
And it wasn't really like a guest house, but I guess you could call it like an eco hotel.
Yeah,
Like everyone there was local and they were so, so friendly towards my son.
yeah,
That was also at the same time that we actually like hung out with one of like the staff there, and he was really, he built a good rapport with my son.
yeah.
And so that's like the uncle that Adam, like my son was asking about, like, oh, how is uncle, from the Pulau Kapas?
That is so cute. Like,
Yeah,
I love that. But yeah,
yeah. But yeah, I know I get what you mean, because I was reading and like researching about how like a lot of the big chain hotels um don't really like do their part in being more like environmental friendly or sustainable. There was actually there's actually one of the islands in Malaysia, I think it's in Perhentian. Um, I think last year Marriott like opened up a luxury hotel there. And when I read the reviews, they hadn't even opened yet. Like people left like really like bad reviews saying like, they basically tore down like a lot of trees and like we really didn't need this because a lot of the other hotels that were already on that island were really like small ones
yeah.
that has been there for like years now. So
Yeah, that's really important to know. They did a really similar thing in Langkawi as well with one of the hotels there. I think it was the Anantara, but I'm not 100% sure. Like this is from when I was a travel agent, so it's years ago now, and I'm probably misquoting. But these places that are so natural, like they don't need massive hotels, like as you say, you can go and enjoy the surrounding area. And like eco hotels are a great way to do that, or like solar powered hotels, because they make use of the natural resources without destroying them.
can I share? It was just from a conversation that I had with my mom. So there is a hotel called the Datai, if I'm not mistaken, in
Yeah.
Langkawi. I don't know if you've heard of them. Um, but my mom was watching like a documentary about how they really try their best to preserve like the forest around. I don't know how long they've been around,
Mm.
but they employ like local people to be like tours, and then they bring like the guests through the forest, and they have like it was basically like a self-sustaining ecosystem. Like they like recycle everything and they do everything like in-house. And
That's
yeah, I think like one of my friends had stayed there before, and she was just like, it was a really good experience, and she felt it was like worth staying there. And so I guess like it depends on the hotel. Like those are the things that we should take into consideration, like when we choose places.
Yeah, I agree. I agree. And I think, like I was saying, when you have a child, I think often people are like, well, I'm just going to go with the brand that I really like know best. So I'm going to go with Marriott or I'm going to go with Hilton because I know they'll have the facilities that I need. And, to a certain extent, like I'm not saying it's like bravery or whatever to take your child to a place that might not be as familiar, but I do think it shows that you can still do it, right? Like you're doing it, other people are doing it, and it's something that can be done.
Yeah, definitely. You
Yeah.
just have to be a bit more flexible.
Yes, you do.
And
So,
I guess for me it's a little bit easier because I think for example, like people like to go to familiar hotels because they might have things like cribs. Um, but for us, because we're out of the crib phase and we actually bed share, like we co-sleep,
mhm.
and so I guess it's like a little bit easier for us. And again, that's just like a personal preference of how we do it.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Yeah, everybody's different. So when you travel with your toddler, obviously I'm sure that it kind of does come with some challenges. So what are some ways that you try and overcome that?
Yeah, so when you travel with a toddler, there's a lot of diapers. And I mean, even, on a day-to-day basis, like we use disposable diapers, and I know that that's not considered sustainable, but for us, that's like the easiest thing that will keep us sane. Because I feel like if I had to use cloth diapers, and just like be doing laundry or like washing them all the time, like especially when you're traveling.
Yeah.
Yeah, I feel like that's one of the challenges in terms of sustainability when you're traveling with a toddler. But also the amount of snacks. Oh my gosh. I feel like every time before we travel, like we always go shopping for snacks, and somehow it always ends up like a lot in like, packages where there's like plastic and but yeah, he loves those.
Yeah.
And
Toddlers
I'm
like
like,
praise constantly.
yeah, yeah, and they're hungry a lot.
Yeah.
So we're always snacking on things. And yeah, I would say like that's like one of the challenges as well. Yeah, even when we pack like fresh fruits, sometimes they come in like plastic containers and stuff
Yeah.
like that. So yeah.
No, but it's good to be aware of those things. Like I meant actually more general, but it's really interesting to hear you talk about like from a sustainability perspective, like here are the challenges I've considered as well. Because I think it is really important to recognize that like everyone kind of has their limits. And like you said, you don't want to be stopping every 2 days to wash like a bag full of very dirty diapers, that are like you really don't want to be carrying those around with you and that kind of thing. Like that's
Ellie too.
yeah, exactly. And like the snacks, like he has to eat and he has to be like prioritized in that way. So it is really interesting. I think there are a lot of people who within the sustainability space perhaps hold like quite a lot of judgment for people who say like I can't travel more sustainably because I've got a toddler or I can't do this and I can't do that. And I like to look at it, there are certain things you can do which you're doing beautifully, but there are also like limitations. You can't do everything, especially when you have this additional consideration to make, which is your child, right?
Yeah, exactly. And I think that's like a really good point. Like what we were mentioning earlier is that, you don't have to be perfect,
Yeah.
but every little bit counts.
Yeah.
So just do whatever you can.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Exactly. And what are some of the like kind of more general challenges that you have traveling with a toddler then? Is it challenging or is it not so hard?
I think in the beginning, yeah, it was really tough.
Yeah.
Um, But I think it was more because of it wasn't really my son, but it was more like on me
Yeah.
because I felt like overwhelmed and confused and anxious. Like, oh my gosh, like how many diapers do I pack? Like, what if this happens? And what if we forget this? And like you're trying to bring
Yeah.
your whole house and pack it into a suitcase.
Yeah.
And so yeah, but honestly, like traveling wise, it has been quite manageable, I feel. It's just that, you would have to like sometimes time your travel times with like their naps. Or
Yeah.
like for example, for me, I really try to only do traveling like in the morning.
Yeah. Okay.
That way he's, well slept and fed and happy. And compared to like traveling, at night or like towards the end of the day when he's so tired and sometimes like, he doesn't get to nap because he's too excited or like overstimulated.
Yeah.
And so yeah, it's like navigating the sleep schedule, especially when they like he was younger.
Mm.
because now he only like naps once a day. But when he was younger, he would have like two naps, or like three naps. Yeah, and then he gets cranky when he doesn't nap properly. So yeah.
Yeah, so
Um,
it's like kind of
what
adapting
else?
the day to them, I guess.
Yeah, definitely. Like your life is dictated by their schedule.
Well, they're very like routine oriented little beings, aren't they? Like I mean, as I said, I'm not a mum, so I can't speak to the same experience, but in a similar but different way, I have a rescue dog, as most of my listeners know. And it is very like if we take him on, say, like a weekend away or like if because I was planning to go to Europe with him at one point, like it is like I have to think I can't he has to sort of come first in that way. Like I have to make sure that he gets his walks, that we've got enough food. I can't be just like going to everywhere and anywhere all throughout the day and like full on go, go, go like I might on my own. It has to be like kind of working my day around him. And I suppose it's similar, but obviously like very different when you have a child.
Oh yeah, yeah. No, it's definitely like similar in that sense. Like you have, someone to take care of.
Yeah.
And yeah, in this case, it's your dog. And yeah, I think that's wonderful that he's a rescue and that he's getting the walks that he needs. It's the same thing for a toddler.
Yeah.
They just they have so much energy.
Yeah.
A lot of energy. So like if you can get that out like early in the morning, then that's good. Like, do you also walk your dog in the afternoons?
No, we do, but that made me laugh because he has to have a big long walk in the morning so that the rest of the day he's calm. It's like so similar, but it's I know it's different, but it is so similar. Um, but yeah,
And they do so well, like outdoors, getting movement in, like getting sunlight, all those things that really play a factor to like their emotional regulation and temperament throughout the day.
yeah,
So
and I imagine you're the same. Like when they have a good day, you have a good day. It needs to be
yeah. Oh,
kind of they have to be.
does your dog like have bad days?
Does he what? Sorry.
Does he have like does he have like more challenging days as well?
Yeah, he's not a traumatized rescue, so he has no like trauma or anything like that, which is thank God. But he was, I think every rescue has a degree of like trauma in the sense that they've been taken from one home and put in a new one. So it took him quite a long time to adjust to just like new first time dog parents in a way that I feel like I'm taking your spot. Like it's obviously very different, but
It's okay. I love listening to this. Yeah.
but it did take him some time to kind of adapt. And then he has to have like he's very specific on a routine. So like as I said, has to go out for a big long walk in the mornings, like normally an hour and a half, and then in the afternoons as well. But we're getting there.
That's such a good workout for you too.
Yeah, I
That's
like
what
that.
you want. So like whatever weather it is, like you guys just get out.
Yeah,
Wow.
we have storms in the UK. So sometimes it's like kind of gusts of wind, and I'm walking with the dog, like, oh my God.
Because
But
you love him so much. Oh, yeah. I
yeah,
mean, speaking about routine, right? Yeah, I would say like for me, I'm a bit more like structured.
yeah,
I even myself, like, I like routines, and babies in general, they thrive on routine.
yeah.
And kids too. But I have my sister-in-law. She's a mom of four kids,
Wow.
and she's amazing. But her style is totally different. She's very much like I'm flexible. She's much more relaxed and calmer. But I don't know if it's because she has four kids already. Because like once you have more than one, you're just kind of like, oh, okay, everything goes.
Yeah. Wow. I couldn't do that.
But she actually like told me, like when it comes to traveling and having naps, she was like, if you are okay with being flexible, the baby will be okay. So like it's really like up to you. Um, but then again, it's like yes, but they might be overtired and then they're just like cry. It just really depends on the baby. And so yeah, there are different styles. Like I think some moms are much more like, flexible and they can handle like, if their kids like get upset or overtired and cranky, they'll just like deal with it. But I personally get stressed, so I try to avoid it.
I mean, it's like you said, everybody's kind of different. Everybody has their style. And maybe it is just that they're like better at dealing with kind of toddler meltdowns or like toddler crises. Um, But I've worked with like a lot of children in my life. Like I used to be like a full-time nurse. I used to work in nursery and like I've babysat a lot of kids, got younger siblings. I cannot deal with like a melting down child. Like, I mean, I can, but I would really rather not.
Yeah, same. I have so actually my son is he's grandchild number 13 out of 16.
Wow.
So before him, I was already an aunt to like so many nephews and nieces.
Yeah.
But yeah, nothing could prepare me for my own child's meltdowns.
Yeah, if it's your own kid, I bet it's even worse. Like I distinctly remember because I'm like quite, when I babysit kids, I like to take them out and like have fun days out with them, that kind of thing. And I distinctly remember taking out a 4-year-old child who, in fairness, was going through a very difficult time, like her parents were splitting up. And she just threw like the biggest temper tantrum in the middle of a public space. And I was like, I don't know what to do. Like, there's a certain level of Patty that I can deal with. And then beyond that, I'm like, you won't stop. Like, you will not stop. And everybody looks at you. And it's like, it takes a real, like, strength of character, I think, to literally just pick up the child and be like, right, we're just going to move on with our day and forget about this.
Yeah, exactly. I think that was one of my biggest fears when I first started traveling with my son. I was like, what if, he like just cries nonstop and he's like on the floor and
Yeah.
I'm screaming and crying. And I'm trying to think, I feel like it has happened before, but it's like you built that like thick skin and that resilience to just kind of like pick them up, like move him to like another place to like try to calm him down. And I I learned this hack from a coaching parent. It's like it's a quick list of things to check when they're having the meltdown. It's like, are they hungry? If they are, just give them a snack. Most of the time it's because they're hungry. Or
Yeah.
like if they're angry about something, if they're lonely, they're tired, or they're sick.
Yeah.
And so usually like when I go down that list, I'm like, okay, I think I can like help you. But really they just like need a space to feel their emotions and to let it out because they can't like regulate their emotions yet.
Yeah.
Um, and yeah, like 4-year old, that's like, really still in toddlerhood. And it's normal. But yeah, I completely understand what you mean. It's so like a bit embarrassing as well because like everyone's just looking at you as an adult, like, what are you gonna do about this?
Yes.
So
But it's interesting that you said like it obviously has happened, but you can't remember it. So it's clearly not that big a deal. Like, you just move on and like after a while you develop, like you said, the thick skin, the kind of fortitude to be like, yeah, this is happening. Like, it's fine. And like you said, yeah, like you said, they just don't really have like the words or the mental capacity to regulate themselves, to explain what's going on. And like for the people who don't understand that and are maybe staring at you like, aren't you going to stop your child having a temper tantrum? That really is on them. Like, it's not about like you stepping in and fixing this entirely. They need a space. They need to just get it out and deal with it, Like,
yeah, and I feel like this is why parents need to get comfortable bringing their kids into spaces because, kids deserve to be a part of society.
yeah, I
And they're
agree.
people too, like with real feelings.
Mm.
Um, and yeah, when we travel, that's one of the things that actually impact, where we choose to travel because I feel like some places are more friendlier towards kids. And it really does make a huge difference
Mm.
when you travel. So,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, like think about how many adults like were kind of shushed or like shut up in childhood. Like we need to stop that and allow them to be a part of society so they can like grow and learn. Definitely. I love that.
Yeah.
But it also must be quite like you must love it. You must love traveling with him. You must have some rewarding moments. So yeah, tell us about a little bit about that, a bit about the positives.
Yes. I think it's like it's a very special feeling, like viewing the world from your child's eyes.
Yeah.
And they're kids. I feel like kids just love anything simple. Like they don't need fancy things, or like they don't need to go to fancy resorts or whatever. They just really want to spend time with you and just play and have fun. And
Yeah,
so I think that's one of the things that I really love, like about traveling with my son, is that I get to see him explore, the world and expand his horizon.
yeah,
Um, and it forces us to do travel a bit slower as well.
yeah.
Because with kids, it's hard to rush around and kind of like, tick things off from your list. It's no longer that. We usually like our ideal travel trip now is basically just like go to a nice location, preferably a beach,
Yeah.
and just enjoy our time together. And
Mm,
at most, we would have maybe like one activity in the morning and then one activity in the afternoon, and
mm,
just like really take it easy,
yeah.
just spend time with each other.
Yeah, that's
So
lovely.
I really love that. I just love about that, like traveling with him. Yeah.
Yeah. And as you said, like seeing the world through his eyes, like there must be so many things that kind of seem mundane to us, where he's just like, wow, like this is so cool. And that's really sweet.
Oh, yeah, for example, riding a bus. Like in Malaysia, it's a very car-centric country.
Yeah.
A lot of people drive, and it's actually a bit hard to get around if you don't have a car.
Mm,
And so sometimes when we do like staycations in the city in KL, we would just ride the bus around, which is something that we usually don't do when we are at home.
yeah.
And yeah, it's like something so simple.
And he loves
Yeah,
it.
but he loves it so much. Yeah, and the train as well. Yeah,
Oh,
it's just like a boy thing. He loves transportations.
yeah, but it is like really cool. I remember like seeing because my dad lost his driving license when we were kids, and my just briefly, but my brother was about four at the time, maybe 4, 5. I think I was like 14, 15. And watching him on the bus, like it is really funny. Like they're just like pressed up against the window, and it's like this is the same as a car. Like you also see these things in a car, but he was just like fascinated.
Yeah, we rode I mean when we were in Singapore we basically took a lot more like public transportation, and
Yeah,
they have really good transportation in Singapore, I feel.
yeah.
And so yeah, it was such a fun experience for my son. He loved it so much. And yeah, it's something so simple but fun.
That is really, really sweet. And so when we're talking about like growing a community, which you have like a great community now, is it mainly online or is it in person in KL?
It's both, yes. So it's we have conversations online, but I would say all of the events that I've hosted in the past year have been in person.
Hmm.
But this year I do want to organize and run virtual workshops.
Yeah.
So I do hope to expand that community online as well for people who can't make it.
Hmm.
But yeah, I love having a physical space. I mean, like connecting with people in real life. I feel like it's a different energy.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Yeah, it's more supportive, I think, in person because you can really like be there for each other, listen to each other and that kind of thing. But I think it's great and it's so important to kind of have that space. And you do like really important work as the host of that. Can you do you think you could share some highlights of like when you've brought first time mums together and like yeah, like what highlights have you had from that experience?
Yeah, I think some of the highlights that I've had is, getting feedback from them, and hearing that like they don't feel so alone anymore,
Yeah.
in their motherhood journey. Yeah, because, it really does take a village to raise children.
Hmm.
And then I would say like in Malaysia, there's a lot of family support, but not everyone has that. And even if you do, it's different from like when it comes to hearing it from other moms.
Hmm.
And so yeah, when I get like feedback from the mom saying like they feel more supported and they had a good time meeting other moms. And the last event that I had, it was really heartwarming because it was, I think there were maybe close to 30 people, 30 women in
Oh,
the same room, and they were chatting with each other, and I was just kind of taking it all in. And just, I get nervous about like, all the activities and like the hosting, but when the events happen, it's like, the main star of the show is like the moms,
yeah.
and them connecting with each other and feeling supported. And yeah, they stay in touch, and they like hang out after that. And yeah, it just makes me feel like, so it like warms my heart basically.
Aw.
And it makes me feel like it's worth doing that because it does take like a lot of effort. Um,
Yeah, of course it does. It's amazing what you do. And I think people underestimate like how much it takes to host a community space, I think. And like it's not like even that it's not like the stress of it or whatever, but it's like you have to watch all the time constantly what's going on. Like I know from when I've done some of the things in the past, like you're always thinking like, is everybody having a good time? Is everybody getting on? Have I done enough? Have I like organized enough to fill the time? Is everybody happy? But at the end of the day, like you said, it doesn't really matter. It's just they have to do that work themselves. They'll get out of it what they put in. And it's amazing that they have that space because like part of sustainability when we're talking about this and like kind of not pouring as much into like overconsumption or like just general like the world as we have it today is building this community and being able to rely on it. And yeah, I also think that's really important for this topic as well.
yeah, definitely. I was thinking about like, in general, like what are some sustainable practices that mom communities do?
Mhm.
And I don't know if I don't know if you've like seen this, but I feel like this happens everywhere where we basically trade secondhand things,
Yeah,
especially when it comes to baby products. So even within like my family, because I have such a big family, we would just pass around like baby clothes, like
yeah,
on the baby. um, and yeah, it's things like that, like because they outgrow baby clothes so fast.
yeah.
And even things like cribs and strollers, like the current stroller that we have is like a secondhand. And when we got it, it was like a really good condition. It felt
Mm,
like it was new even. Um, and yeah, like in Malaysia, there's a lot of exchanges like that happening,
mm.
whether you pay for it or not. But yeah, I think that's the power of community.
Yeah, I do agree.
Yeah, we try to help each other out. And some of the baby things can get really expensive. So
Yeah.
yeah, so it's like a really good alternative. And some people are happy to even just like let it go and like you don't have to pay anything.
Yeah, and that's kind of how it should be. Like, I don't have anything against paying for secondhand things. I do it often, but like I kind of love this idea that we all just like, swap and share what we have, like whether it be food or clothing or just kind of like you said, a crib in fantastic condition, like it's probably been slept in very little. And then you get this perfect item that you can make good use of. Like that's for me, like that is true sustainability is having this kind of cyclical, circular economy that just doesn't depend on constantly consuming.
Definitely.
Yeah. I really like that. And so you obviously travel with your kid, you've done like a lot of good work on kind of building that up, but I know other people are not as confident. So what tips would you give like first time mums who are thinking about taking their toddler or their baby away with them, but they're too nervous? Like what would you say to them?
Um, so there's a few things, but I would say maybe for number one is that I will be mindful of the age that you decide to travel. And obviously, every family is different, every kid is different, but this is like from my experience. I find that if you want to travel like long haul or like far distances, do it before they turn one or
Okay.
before they start walking. Because once they start walking, oh my gosh, it's gonna be hard to kind of like contain them in a car or a plane, or a bus or a train. Yeah, because they just like want to explore everything. Because I
Mhm.
feel like the age between like 1 to 2 years old is a bit hard
Okay.
personally. So I would kind of like, get like when they're babies, it's like a perfect time. Meaning like when they're like maybe 3 months to like 1 year old, it's like a good time because they still sleep a lot at that time. And so it's kind of like easier for you to kind of like travel and then maybe even, get some time, like a date for you and your husband while the baby naps in the stroller, things like that. Um, and then it gets easier, I feel like, after they turn two, because they can communicate, what's bothering them or like what they need. And then, yeah, it just makes it like a more smooth experience when you travel, depending on the kid's age and temperament.
I'm so like surprised. Well, surprised, not surprised, but also I think it's such a good point to say go before they turn like, one, and while they're still like kind of, as you say, contained or like a bit more docile in their stroller, to like go long haul, because I think that's the time period where most people will be like, oh God, no, like I couldn't possibly like do that. I'm too stressed out. Don't want to have time with me and my partner. Like I just want to all eyes on the baby, you know?
Yeah, I know. This is something that I wish someone had told me before.
Yeah.
Like, little did I know, toddlerhood is like a whole different ball game.
Yeah.
It's very different compared to when he was a baby. Like, yeah, but maybe because he was, quite an easygoing baby, I guess. So I feel like looking back, I would have traveled more when he was, you know, under 1 year old.
Yeah, it's great advice though. Like, have the confidence to take them and like just go for it. Like this is your free time. You can do it.
Yeah. And number two, I guess, would be to travel slower
Yeah.
and choosing the type of travel intentionally for what works like for you and your family. So personally for me, I would love to go to Europe and like Japan, Korea, but I wouldn't do that right now in this season of like motherhood
Hmm.
and my son's toddlerhood because he's still a very young toddler.
Yeah.
Um, like in Europe, it's not really like stroller friendly. There's a
Mm.
lot of stairs. Um, and in Japan and Korea, um, and this is like something that I have read online, and also my friends who personally went there experienced, and they shared their experience with me. Is that there's a certain expectation on kids
Yeah. Okay.
in their culture. They expect kids to be very well behaved if you go onto the if you go like ride the train or the bus, like you can't have the kids like talking out loud or like crying or things like that. They
Mm.
are, yeah, like generally as a culture they have like higher expectations on kids, I feel, compared
Mm.
to like if you go to places like Indonesia or Thailand. They are very, very friendly. They love kids. Like if you go out to eat at restaurants, like a lot of the servers will hold your baby for you or like play with the kids. And it really makes a huge difference in like your experience when you travel. Because when you travel, you want to have fun, you want to enjoy it. You don't want to have to worry about like, people getting mad at you for your kids. And yeah, I think that's something that I would be mindful of.
Yeah.
And yeah, and maybe I can share like one more tip.
Yes, please do.
Uh, So, another tip that I have is like if you're traveling, what I've done before is I would pack like small toys and wrap them with wrapping paper. And depending on how long we're going, I would maybe do like six or seven and just like pull that out whenever we're like waiting in lines or um, just to kind of like keep my son entertained and kind
Mm.
of like reward him because sometimes when you travel, there's a lot of like, stages to it. because you have to wait in lines and you have to wait for like boarding, or
Yeah.
like if you're going for long road trips, it could be like more than 4 or 5 hours and they have to be entertained in the back seat. And so just having like small toys just like wrapped,
Mm.
it kind of like has that novelty. And and the last time we did like a really short road trip, my son was like asking me like, "Oh, do you have any like gifts for me?"
Aw.
I forgot to wrap like small toys. And I mean, obviously, like you can buy new toys, but sometimes we just recycled old toys that he like has not played with for a while. And
Yeah.
so it's new again to him. So
That's
yeah.
so cute. And actually, that's like a pro tip. Like, I wish everybody knew to do that because, as well, like, even if they have seen it before, as you said, it's just the novelty and like the reward of getting a little present, like, kind of must feel like birthday or Christmas. Must be like, oh, this is a special occasion. So cute.
Yeah, only when we travel, only when we go on road trips or flights. Yeah. So
Or flights, yeah. Flights are really difficult for toddlers, I feel like. So it's like he needs like a little thing. That's really cute.
yeah.
Thank you for sharing that. I'm sure it's like a like something that a lot of new mums will kind of take on board and can use as well. Um, so I will wrap up unless you have anything else you want to add to this topic, Alani.
Oh no, I think we covered it all.
A
Yeah.
lot of ground, yeah. Perfect. Well, so what are you working on at the moment and where can people find you?
Yeah, so this year I am hosting more workshops in person and also virtually. And yeah, so topics like building resilience for moms, family nutrition, and like healthy meal planning, tackling like mom burnout. Yeah, I've got like a really exciting lineup for
Mhm.
this year. Um,
Amazing.
and so yeah, that's what I'm currently working on.
Yeah.
And yeah, but you can find me on Instagram, Ilani.Zin. I also write on my blog, bloomwithbobs.com, and I have a newsletter where I write love letters for moms every month.
Oh,
And yeah.
that's so sweet.
Oh, but I'm most active on Instagram, and yeah, I read all the comments, I reply all the DMs. So come and say hi and chat and hang out with me on Instagram.
Amazing. Well, this,
Um,
yeah, go on.
I forgot. I do want to share about my freebies. Is that okay?
Yes, please do.
Oh yeah, so I have two resources that will be like really helpful for first-time moms, especially. One, if you are traveling, like I have a free family checklist, and it's really comprehensive. And I wish I had it when I was a new first-time mom. I even like lay out like how many you would need to pack, and yeah, so that you don't forget anything when you
So,
travel. And then yeah, and then if you're a toddler mom, I have 7 toddler mom hacks to save you time and energy.
mhm.
And these are like real hacks that I personally have done from my own experience for the past 3 years. So
Nice.
yeah, if like they're in the links in my bio on Instagram. So
Super useful. Thank you so much. So this has been the Sustainable Travel Podcast. You can find us on Instagram at the Sustainable Travel Podcast, and we're also on my website, which is thattravel.co.uk. If you're listening on Spotify, please don't forget to like and subscribe, and the same thing on YouTube. Thank you so much. Thank you, Ilani.
thank you so much, Emma.